Welcome to the Ghostly Chronicles. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, hidden beyond trails long forgotten, there was a legend about Kharos Cave, a cavern said to be cursed. The few locals who spoke of it called it the Breathing Cave, claiming you could hear it inhale and exhale as though it were alive. Those who ventured inside either went mad or never returned. The legend spoke of a single artifact buried within, an ancient lantern that could grant the bearer incredible power, but at a terrible price. Evelyn was no stranger to danger. An archaeologist obsessed with forbidden relics, she had uncovered tombs, deciphered lost languages, and escaped death more times than she cared to admit. When she heard the story of the Lantern of Kharos, she knew she had to find it. With a map stitched together from old folklore and a backpack full of supplies, she set off into the wilderness. The entrance to Kharos Cave was nothing like she expected. The jagged maw of the cavern yawned open, frost clinging to its edges despite the warm summer air. The moment she stepped inside, Evelyn felt it, a faint vibration beneath her boots, like the cave was subtly shifting. Her headlamp illuminated slick walls covered in strange carvings, human figures with empty eyes and mouths twisted in silent screams. As she descended deeper, the air grew colder and heavier, each breath feeling like it was being drawn through molasses. The sound of dripping water echoed endlessly, but it wasn't random. It almost sounded like a rhythm, a heartbeat, and then she heard it, a deep, resonant inhale. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The sound reverberated through the cave, followed by a low exhale. It wasn't wind, it wasn't natural, but Evelyn pushed forward. She had come too far to turn back now. Hours passed, or at least it felt that way. Time seemed to warp in the darkness. The deeper she went, the more the carvings changed. The human figures were now kneeling before a floating lantern, their twisted expressions turning to something worse: hunger, desperation, and worship. Evelyn's headlamp flickered, and she swore the shadows on the walls moved when she wasn't looking. Finally, she reached a massive chamber. In the center, suspended in midair by invisible forces, was the Lantern of Kharos. It glowed faintly, casting long, distorted shadows across the cavern walls. The carvings here depicted figures clawing at each other, fighting to reach the lantern, their faces stretching into unrecognizable shapes. Evelyn approached slowly. The air around the lantern felt alive. It pulsed, each pulse syncing with the cave's breathing. Her instincts screamed at her to leave, but her curiosity burned brighter. The closer she got, the more the lantern seemed to whisper, words just out of reach like the hum of a forgotten song. Her hand trembled as she reached out. The moment her fingers touched the lantern, the whispers turned into a deafening roar. The cavern shook violently, the walls seeming to ripple like water. Evelyn stumbled back, clutching the lantern as it grew hotter in her hands. The carvings around her began to peel off the walls, their figures stepping forward, their hollow eyes fixed on her. They weren't carvings anymore. They were real. The shadows surged toward her, their movements jerky and unnatural, their mouths opening in silent screams. Evelyn ran, lantern clutched tightly to her chest. The cave's breathing grew louder, each inhale pulling her backward as if the entire cavern was trying to drag her into its depths. She sprinted through the twisting tunnels, the shadows always just behind her. The light from the lantern flickered, but every time it dimmed, the shadows slowed, recoiling from its glow. It was her only shield, and yet she could feel it draining her, its heat searing her skin and sapping her strength. Finally, she saw the faint outline of the cave's entrance. Summoning every ounce of strength, she threw herself toward the light of the outside world. The moment she crossed the threshold, the cave let out a deafening roar, its inhale pulling the shadows back into its depths. The silence that followed was suffocating. Evelyn collapsed on the grass, the lantern still clutched in her hands. It no longer glowed, its surface now cold and black. But as she looked closer, she saw her reflection in its glass. Not her face, but something twisted, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched into a scream. She dropped the lantern, but the image remained burned in her mind. She made her way back to civilization, but something wasn't right. Her shadow moved when she didn't, flickering in ways that defied the light. At night she could hear faint whispers, growing louder with each passing day. And the worst part? The lantern had followed her. No matter where she went, it would appear waiting for her to pick it up again. Evelyn realized too late, the lantern wasn't a treasure, it was a curse, and now it was hers to bear, forever. Please like, share, and subscribe.